Sports fans,
Sports lovers,
welcome back to another episode of Global Sports from a Caribbean Perspective, the place where we give you the best games, the best teams, the best players, the best takes on global sports from a Caribbean perspective. And I'm your host today, Shaba, and I'm here with
Dops.
We've got another VSPL episode lined up as the title race, the top 3 race, and the relegation battle all continue to heat up heading into the final 2 games of the season. System 3 were denied the opportunity to clinch the title. Then you hit 12. That's right, 12. Jebelle ran riot, and the defending champions reminded everyone exactly who they are. Let's get straight into it with our game week 16 review. And the first game of the weekend saw an awesome take on Jebelle, and it was a statement performance from Jebelle. Java Odean absolutely stole the show with a brilliant hat-trick, his second hat-trick of the season, finding the net in the 21st, the 41st, and the 61st minute. Delano Benjamin and Najima Borgen also got themselves on the score sheet in a complete attacking display. At the other end, Tristan John secured yet another clean sheet as Jebelle continued to build momentum in the closing weeks of the season. So, thoughts on Jebelle's route of awesome? I certainly didn't predict this coming into it. I actually predicted an awesome win. Thought Jebelle were gonna rotate and not necessarily take these games as seriously as I thought they clearly did. So, thoughts on Jebelle's
fantastic performance. As you say, we didn't expect this. Awesome being one of the most defensive teams, well structured. We didn't really see this route coming. But credit to Java for a brilliant hat trick. I think it was either the first or the second goal from a couple yards out. That was really some finish, and I think it really set the tone for the kind of afternoon Jebelle we're gonna have. Confidence up, and it had me questioning what's left to play for Jebelle. If they're hoping for a big slip up from system three L's in a row, and they could win the title with some slip ups from Layou. They still have an outside looking, but realistically, I'm wondering if it's a cash prize on hand for like the third place or the second place teams, because it was really a great performance from them. But we thought that some of these teams would be on the beach already, but obviously Jebelle still have things to play for.
Yeah, and it was very impressive, especially Delano Benjamin's goal. Despite Java having the hat trick, Delano definitely had the best goal of the game where he set out from about 30 yards.
That's the one I saw.
Yeah, that's the one I sent in the group. So that was Delano Benjamin, and he's been one of Jebelle's most consistent players throughout the season. So credit to him for the finish. Najima's goal was also a cross that saw its way into the nets. I'm sure Najima himself would admit that. But as for the game itself, Jebelle, too awesome apart. They never looked like getting themselves back into the game. As mentioned, Tristan John secured another clean sheet. Didn't necessarily have that much to do. If any team looked on the beach, it definitely looked like awesome were on the beach, and like they have nothing left to play for. So shout out to Jebelle. They did what they have to, and they move on. So from one attacking display to Camdonia, who took on Bequia in a clash that was very important at the bottom of the table. So Camdonia picked up a huge 3 points in the relegation battle with a hard-fought 2-1 win over Bequia, which basically secured their place in the Premier Division for next season. Second half goals from Kyle Nero and Okido Cottle put Chelsea in control before Bequia captain Mark Brown continued his excellent run of form with another goal to set up a tense finish. But Camdonia held form and walked away with a massive victory. Side note on this game, I was watching the game, and late in the second half, can't say around which time, but sometime during the second half, there was a light that went at the Brighton Technical Facility, right? And the game was paused for a bit, and where the referee consulted with both captains, and they continued with one of the lights being blown as well. And the commentators mentioned that this is something that also took place in the Avenues game last weekend as well. So just something that we'll discuss a bit later on when we have our gripes as usual. But Chelsea picked up another important win for them. As mentioned, they're now safe for next season. Bequia missed a lot of opportunities in this game. They had chances to score, and were very, very wasteful. We could tell that they were fighting for their lives out there. They put out a very spirited performance, I would have to say. But they just couldn't come up with the goals in the end. Thoughts?
I guess that's why they are where they are. Because this was a big 6-pointer, and could have pulled back, pull Camdonia back into that relegation. Into closer to the relegation drop that they wanted to. So I thought that Bequia would have defeated Chelsea, especially with the amount of chances that I've seen them create in the past few weeks and how clinical they've been. It was a bit surprising to see that Chelsea came away with the victory, but credit to them. They have been a bit iffy and inconsistent in front of goal, but it's great to see two different scorers, Nero and Cottle, get on the score sheet for them.
Yeah, shout out to Wilson and his team for, surviving another year in the Premier Division. They play great spirited football. They clearly have an identity and a style that they try to stick to, and it's worked for them for another season. They're gonna finish lower than they did last season, but staying in the Premiership is definitely something to be commended for. As for Bequia, they are not dead. They still have a chance to survive, but their chances definitely took a hit with that defeat against Camdonia. We move on to Besco Pastures, who took on Hope International, and Hope may have just secured their safety with this result. Valdo Anderson continued his red hot form, scoring his sixth goal in his last 4 games before Jassim James doubled the advantage in the second half. Nayan Delpesh assisted both goals in another quality creative performance by the midfielder. Hosni Chandler pulled one back late for Besco, but Hope held on for a massive 3 points and now moved 4 points clear of the drop zone. On Hosni Chandler, Hosni has been out for some time with a condition or something that has been preventing him from playing football. Is a well-known player to the Premier Division as well. So it's good to see him back and on the score sheet as well, because I'd say definitely if he was available and at his best, Besco definitely would have been higher up in the table, as he possesses elite finishing prowess and pace in behind. But Hope would be very, very happy for this victory. Valdo returned in the last 4 games now, as we mentioned, 6 goals at a crucial, very crucial stage of the season for his team. So do you think that Hope are completely safe with this result, or considering who they have this weekend, is it still up in the air?
I I say Hope are safe. Even with System 3, I think they still have avenues to play, if I am correct.
I'll check.
So I still think they have the better run of fixtures compared to Bequia, who has Jebelle and someone else. Snag mentioned it to me. Yeah, I think Hope still looks better because the run is not as hard despite having System 3.
I tend to agree. I think I'll have to agree because the performance that they put on against Besco, and we'll get to that in our prediction segment as well, it gives me some sort of hope that, pun intended, no pun intended, that they know what they're playing for, and they seem to have upped their game a bit, at least in this fixture. So I'd say that they consider themselves to be safe at the moment in terms of the points gap, but things could change so quickly, and as long as it's not mathematically confirmed, they shouldn't be celebrating too early, right? And speaking of goals, we move on to Layou, who decided they wanted all of them. They took on Avenues United, who only had 10 available players, as already relegated Avenues seem to have completely given up on this in season. Layou defeated them by 12 goals to 1. In the previous fixture, they also conceded 8 goals to Layou as well. So this is a combined 20 goals over the past 2 games that Avenues have conceded to Layou. Layou put on an absolutely dismantling of the already relegated Avenues. As I mentioned, Kobe Mingo was absolutely unstoppable. 5 goals and an assist in a ridiculous performance. The other goal scorers, Rashid Wallace, Josh Nash, Kenija Joseph, Ken Polius, Devante Sam, Cheslin Hendrickson, and Jomari Lynch also got involved. Xavier Jack briefly made it 2-1, right? But after that, it was a complete demolition from Layou as they continue to hope for a System 3 slip up. So, what are your thoughts on Layou's demolition?
Yeah, you could see that they are still in the fight. They are still hoping, that things go in their favor where System 3 games are concerned. And, they are trying to pile on as much as possible as after scoring goals, they run back to the halfway line to try and get more. So they understand the urgency. They know if they end up on the same amount of points as System 3 will win the title. So they were trying to get as much goals as possible. But yeah, I love how it's shaping up. We thought it was a foregone conclusion with System 3 having a 8 or 9 point gap all the way up. But now it's a little bit closer and much to our liking. And yeah, you could only do their part and hope for the best in the System 3 fixtures.
Yeah, not much to add. I predicted that the likes of Mingo would be looking to fill their boots in a game like this, and he certainly did, taking his tally to 16 goals for the season. So 16 goals in 16 game weeks is very impressive for the Layou number 9, and Vinci Heat number 9 as well. So credit to him for taking the opportunity to up his goal tally. Did so in none of the goals were absolutely spectacular. But that's just the nature of the player as well. Very simple and clinical finisher, I'd have to say. So no surprise with the scoreline. Very disappointing to see that Avenues have completely given up and basically only having 10 players show up to the entire game, and one of the outfield players had to go in the goal as well. And, it's not a good look. It's not something that we want to see as well in the highest level of football in the country. That is, being streamed worldwide and that kind of thing. We're trying to go semi-professional and all these kind of things. We can't be having teams that are, turning up with 10 players only and no substitute. It's not a good look in 2026. Those are bush league type things. Those are things that you would expect in a bush league, not the Premier Division. So it's not the league's fault necessarily. This is more of a avenues thing, more so. Biggest storyline of the weekend, however, came in the clash between the current champions and the champions elect. So System 3 were denied the opportunity to celebrate on top of the defending champion's head. So Predators completed the double over System 3, becoming the only team to beat them for this season. Cortland Williams stunned the champions elect with his fastest goal of this tournament so far, just inside 12 seconds before Bennington Stapleton doubled the lead from the penalty spot. The speedy Shamron Phillips responded quickly for System 3, but Predators stood firm despite going down to 10 men to secure a huge result. A massive performance from the defending champions and the reminder that they're still one of the toughest sides in the league. Surely.
Absolutely, bro. They really frustrated System 3. Uh, did make it easy at all for them, and they competed on every end. So credit to the Not Leeward Predators. System 3 did have a few chances, but they didn't really, as Solomon especially didn't have his shooting boots on. There was one that I thought was relatively easy. With my left foot, I may not have scored it, but with his, I know, he should have
Expected to score, yeah.
tucked it away quite easily, and it went over the bar. So I think that was quite telling about the game that they were having. It really wasn't the typical System 3 game. Sherman Felix looked like himself, but apart from Denzel in midfield, I think majority of the side had a really poor game. And yeah, it was just what the doctor ordered for Not Leeward Predators.
I'll have to agree. They probably came into the game resting on their laurels, knowing that they're very close to this championship. But that should have been even further motivation, considering that they're going against the team that won the championship last year, and they had the opportunity to win the championship on their head in front of their face. And the fact that they weren't able to get the job done makes me wonder a bit, if things are getting a bit tight. I'm not certain. We know the quality they have. They've been scoring freely throughout this season. But as you mentioned, missing clear, easy opportunities that would have been converted earlier in the season. Just makes you have to wonder a bit. The System 3 players that we spoke to on film before the season began, most of them mentioned that they wanted to face not Layou Predators as the team they'd most want to face. So the fact that they've gone through the season and did not beat Predators, even though they might go on to win the title, I'm sure this will be something that would come back next season again when both teams come to play. So credit to Predators for denying System 3 the opportunity to win the championship on their head. That shows real character and fight from their part. And even in the post-game interview by the player who got the man of the match for Predators, I think his name is Gideon Richards, he spoke very, very passionately about what the game meant to them because they spoke about it in group chats. The coach Bishan Williams and the likes, they all spoke about this game, and it clearly showed in their attitude because, as we mentioned as well, they went down to 10 men midway through the second half, and at that point you would have expected System 3 to go on and make the numerical advantage count, but they didn't, and that's total credit to not Layou Predators and no shame on System 3 at all, who probably will end up lifting the title this weekend, but we'll see. So that wraps up game week 16. We have 2 game weeks remaining and then the season is completed. So we'll move on to our match week awards for game week 16, and I'll let Dappy do the honors.
Yeah, and just continuing on the theme of brilliant performances, we must tip our hats to the Not Layou Predators for doing what no one else has been able to pull off so far in beating System 3, and not only once, they did it twice. So credit again to Not Layou Predators. Massive statement. They were 10 men down. I was to ask you if you think, what do you think about the second yellow for Cortland Williams?
Was it for dissent?
It seems like Moet gave him the second yellow for time wasting, but it didn't look that way to me. I think it was pretty harsh.
Yeah, I also think it was harsh, and the commentators at the time, Axel was mentioning that Cortland is a very experienced player, so that is something that he shouldn't be doing. So I somewhat agree that it was harsh, but maybe the time wasting rules recently that they've changed, and they are clamping down on those kind of things in terms of holding up the ball and kicking away the ball. We saw it with Camdonia in the Champions League. So maybe it's harsh, but maybe that's the direction that football is heading. So
yeah, so team of the week, Not Layou Predators, and the player of the week, I think that was a really easy one for us. After 5 goals and 1 assist in a single game, Kobe Mingo, simply unstoppable. That's the player of the week for us.
Also, bonus player of the week or someone I would just like to shout out, Valo Anderson as well, who has scored 6 goals in his last 4 games, basically to save his team from relegation, basically. And shout out to him. He's missed a few games throughout the season, and you could tell that his presence was missing for hope. So shout out to Valo as well. So just to recap the table, System 3 remain top with a 5-point lead with 2 games to go. So that's a total of 6 points available, and System 3 have a 5-point lead. So System 3 still only require a point to regain the title. Layou are right behind them, and they will be hoping for any sort of slip-ups from System 3. They remain in second, while Jebelle are in third position, with the Not Layou Predators in fourth, have Awesome in fifth, Camdonia in sixth, Besco in seventh, with Hope, Bequia, and Avenues ringing up the bottom of the table. As for the top goal scorers, just to mention, Kobe Mingo made a big move into second place. He was tied with Zibian Cunningham on 11 goals. He's now in lone second place on 16 goals from 16 game weeks. Very, very impressive, but still behind Azil and Solomon, who has 23 goals. So we'll move over to game week 17, the penultimate game week of this VSPL season, and we still have a lot to play for. So we'll begin with Camdonia Chelsea, who take on Layou FC. Camdonia have shown that they can compete with the top sides, but Layou are absolutely flying in attack right now. Keep in mind, anything but a victory here for Layou will cement the title for System 3 as well. Do you think that Camdonia could slow down Layou's attacking momentum?
No, with what you just said, I think Layou would have that in the back of their minds that they need to keep up the pace and let System 3 do the work in terms of getting themselves over the line and not having to depend on them. Yeah, I feel like they will try to score a lot of goals again as well. But as we said, Camden is a very frustrating team, pretty solid, and I would just lean towards a 3-1 victory for Layou here.
I could also see a Layou victory here, knowing what's at stake. The last time these two teams met, it was a 1-1 draw. And if you look back at some of the points that Layou would have dropped throughout the season, they would feel frustrated that, they dropped points against the teams that they did when you see how close the title race is now. And that draw against Camdonia is one of those games. So I could definitely see them looking to make up for that. And I could see them having also a comfortable win. But I could definitely see Camdonia getting on the score sheet as well. So I'll go 4-2, a high scoring one. Moving on to Jebelle FC versus Bequia United. This game also finished 1-1 last time. So Bequia need to win and hope lose versus System 3 to avoid relegation. That's it, plain talk. Hope Bequia has to win in order to avoid relegation, and then hope loses against System 3. So can Mark Brown inspire another huge result to keep his team alive in the title race?
This one is tough, bro. And for some reason, I feel like we are gonna see a similar result to what we saw in the first round of fixtures between these two teams. Um, as much as the urgency would be there for Bequia, I think Jebelle are a little bit more structured than teams that they have faced more recently, and are not as open. That combining with them not having their shooting boots on in the last game, I'll go with a 1-1 victory again, bro. I really, as much as Jebelle are flying high, I I really can't see a difference between these two teams with Bequia coming out for the 3 points. So I think they will cancel out one another in this one, bro.
Based on Jebelle's performance against Awesome in the last round, where I thought that they were gonna be on the beach basically and not, play with much intensity, and the league title is out of their hands and they just be going through the motions. That performance surprised me. And when Java spoke in the post game interview that they don't necessarily have anything to play for, but they want to continue playing good football, playing football the right way, and so I could see Jebelle coming out to play spoiler to Bequia's party here and doing the job for Hope and picking up a victory that would relegate Bequia in this instant. So unfortunately, I could see a Jebelle victory, 3-1, and that result would unfortunately relegate Bequia down to tier 2. Moving on to Awesome, who will face Besco Pastures. The last time this fixture happened, Awesome won 3-2. So two mid-table teams, two inconsistent teams looking to finish the season strong. Which team responds better after a disappointing defeat last week?
I say it would be Besco. Um, they did look, they looked like they put up more of a fight in the last round of fixtures than Awesome, of course. And they aren't dealing with as many. I think what has hurting Awesome too is that they're dealing with so many changes in around the team. I think I pointed that out a couple of weeks ago, and it's while some fixtures may go positively, it still hasn't been like fully ironed out as yet. I think it's hurting them in a big way. Enville hasn't been flying without the likes of a Chad Shrew, who holds so much gravity, pulls so much people towards him, when he's on the field. I think those all those missing pieces hurt Awesome, and Besco has been the same set of players throughout, whether the Nelson Lewis in or out in terms of for red cards and so, but they have been the same team through and through. And while there might not be much between them, I still could see Besco winning this 1-0.
Yeah, in a game where both teams, not necessarily much to play for, I could see this game petering out into a draw. And I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw on this occasion. Just because both teams, there's not much between the teams here. As I mentioned, neither of them can be relegated, neither of them can win the league at this stage. So I could see this game petering out into a 1-1 draw. This is going to be the 3:30 game on Sunday. So I could see that game being a draw, which, doesn't necessarily disappoint or, make either team happy either. Moving on to the fourth game of the weekend, which has huge stakes riding on it for both teams. At this stage, Bequia could be already relegated and Hope could know that they're safe, right? But let's assume that Bequia beats Jebelle. This will be a very huge game for Hope International in terms of their safety in the VSPL for next season. So while System 3 only need a point to officially clinch the title, we know for Hope a win would guarantee their survival regardless of what takes place in the Jebelle Bequia game. So will System 3 finally get the job done, or can Hope produce the upset of the season?
I think System 3 will get the job done, but it would be a really, really tough task. I think this would be a very surprising performance from Hope. That's what I'm expecting. I mean, the last few weeks they have been a bit of a surprise, especially with Valo. You've seen that resurgence, and with what is on the line, even though we know, we might have an idea of if Bequia is down or, if we continue for another week. I feel like they know how urgent or dire the situation is, and we will see one of the best performances from Hope. But with that being said, I feel it might leave a bit too much openings for System 3, and with what they have going on as well, they would like to, capitalize, and they of course rule those missed chances from the last game, and they can't have, back-to-back hiccups. So as I said, they would respond perfectly with a 4-2 victory.
Okay. Well, last week we both predicted them to beat Predators and to clinch the title last week. And when speaking about that game in the show, I mentioned that maybe they're getting a bit tight with, what's on the line and just getting over we've seen it with Arsenal over the years, basically, the pressure increases as the later the season goes on and the higher the stakes get. So I'm not sure if that is what is taking place. Maybe they just had a bad outing. Maybe Predators have their number. But maybe they are getting tight. Maybe. And as we've mentioned, Valo is getting back in form. Well, he's been in form, 6 goals in 4. Hope have been playing better. And System 3 haven't been firing on all cylinders necessarily. That's a draw and defeat in their last 2 games. If I'm being correct, when they won a game, but they drew against Camdonia in the previous game before that.
The game in hand.
Right? So they've won, draw, and lost in their last 3 games. So they've not necessarily been flying. So I don't see why Hope wouldn't come into this game with the utmost confidence. We know the likes of Farrell and his team would want to throw a spanner in the works and make the league as interesting as possible. With that being said, I still expect System 3 to come out victorious based on everything that we've seen thus far from both teams. I just don't think that Hope would have enough defensively to keep them out as Predators did. And I could see System 3 coming out emphatically and winning this game 3-0 with Azino Salman getting his name back on the score sheet and his hand on the trophy. Move on to the final game of the weekend, which doesn't necessarily have much riding on it. We'll see Avenues United take on Predators. Predators won the game, the last fixture, 4-2. So Avenues are officially relegated, and we've seen that their players aren't even turning up to the games anymore. But Predators still have some things to play for that they can finish at least third. So can Predators continue their late push towards the top 3?
Yeah, absolutely. No tactical analysis in this one, bro. 3-0 Predators. Hopefully Avenues could at least get the same 10 players, because I doubt they're going to get 11, but I think it would be an easy game for Predators to just pick them apart and just send them down into the lower tier out of their misery.
Yeah, I agree. This is a game where the likes of Stapleton or whoever wants to get their goal tally up, they will definitely look at this game as the opportunity to get that done. I could see Predators running riot here. 5 goals to nil. Right, and that wraps up our preview of game week 17. There will be game week 18, and then the season will be complete. Before we go, we have shoutouts and we have our little gripes as we usually do as well. So just before we get to the shoutouts, as we mentioned in the game against Camdonia and Bequia, the lights went in the second half. It's something that I've seen Dexter Walker even champion for on his social media platform, that the VSPL should look into having the final 2 match weeks played at the Annersville Stadium due to all of the inconsistencies of the available venues that the games have been played at thus far. The lighting we've seen now at Brighton isn't the best because it's going unexpectedly. It's not the first time that it took place. The first time it happened, though, they said it was because of outage,
Right.
power outage in the area. So maybe that's not their fault. But the second time, one of the lights blew, and that's just not a good look on the live as well. That one of the lights blowing and the game continuing to have part of the pitch in darkness. It just continues with the theme that we've been mentioning this season, that we need to try to keep things towards a professional standard if we're trying to move towards that standard, and small things like that add up. If you could do we could do a whole compilation of stuff that we've spoken about throughout the season uh that need to be improved on, and it would be a long compilation. So those small things add up, and it's just things that we need to tighten up on. Yeah, so moving on to the shout out segment, and I'll let Dappy take it over from here.
Had an international career for Vinci that spanned 18 years, from 1990 to 2008. He had 63 official caps with 15 goals. He appeared in 5 consecutive World Cup qualifying cycles: 1994, 98, 2002, 2006, 2010, totaling 34 matches. In 1995 Caribbean Cup, he was an instrumental playmaker, driving the squad to a historic runner-up finish, losing only to Trinidad and Tobago in the final. And that runner-up finish pushed us into the, I think it was our first appearance at the 1996 CONCACAF Gold Cup. He was anchored in the starting 11 for Vincent and the Grenadines' first and only Gold Cup tournament, sharing a group with powerhouse squads. Mexico and Brazil was in the same group, which is crazy, right? Um, Outstanding moments in the 1996 Gold Cup. He scored his most iconic goal against Mexico in front of 75,000 fans at the high altitude Estadio Azteca, beating legendary goalkeeper Jorge Campos from long range. He also knocked out Jamaica, fired a clutch long range winner to knock out regional favourites Jamaica completely out of the Digital Caribbean Cup. And there was a solo run he put in the 2004 Caribbean Cup as well. All these accolades, all that I'm breaking down here is for the one and only Kenai Velox. There's so much more I could say. He spent 12 highly successful seasons in Trinidad and Tobago. He left the FA Cup in 2003 with the Northeast Stars, and then he returned to the club when he was 36 or 37 years old to lift the league title. He also won the Player of the Month in July 2007 at 36 years old for 5 goals in 6 matches. There's so many other things. He played a charity match with Kaka, Cafu, Edmilson, Rivaldo in 2024 in Trinidad, alongside Dwight York, Russell Latapi, and Kenwin Jones and Stone John. So Kendall Kenai Velox is someone who I've seen play football from a very young age, and I would say I am privileged to witness such greatness. I don't think I could compare him to anything modern in Vinci football. He is one of a kind, And even now, at over 35 at masters level, he's still tearing it up. He was really tremendously gifted, technical, with technical quality. Those Trinidadians used to call him Shortman, and they wish he was Trinidadian too, bro, so that they could have had him in their national ranks, because he was such a brilliant player. I think he is the uncle of Azilo Solomon, so you could see that, that kind of genes run in the family. But he was such a magnificent player, and a region could of Kendall and Kenai Velas to come around at any time now.
If you're a fan of Vincentian football, that is a name that would be synonymous with you, or should be synonymous with you. And if it's not, get familiar with that name, because for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he represents a lot. You heard Dappy mention many of his accolades and the stuff that he achieved, and that wasn't even the half. So Velox, along with the likes of Jack, Chang Jack, those are names that would have been talked about in folklore growing up as a youngster, getting interested in football and in sports. So he is most definitely a legendary figure in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, not just football history, but sporting history. And you could also include it like culturally, because as you mentioned, there's not even been a player you could compare to him currently. And those are the type of players that we are certainly missing in our setup at the moment. Players with that kind of quality to play between the likes of Cafu and Kaka and Edmilson and other Brazilian stars. So reading off all of his achievements and accolades there really emphasizes the impact that he left and still has on Vincentian football. As you mentioned, he in the over 35 Masters, I think he was named MVP of that tournament as well.
Yes.
Despite his team not even winning. So goes to show the quality of the player even at this age. So shout out to Mr. Kendall Velox, aka Kenai, one of the greatest players in St. Vincent and the Grenadines storied history in football, and we hope we could see someone with even half of his talent again anytime in our lifetime, because he is a one in a lifetime type player. So, and that wraps up another episode of our VSPL show. The title race may almost be over, but the battle for top spots and survival is absolutely alive, heading into the final 2 games of the season. So thank you for tuning into Global Sports from a Caribbean perspective. Best games, the best teams, the best players. Provide you with the best takes on global sports from a Caribbean perspective. I was your host today, Shaba, and I was here with
Dubs.
We continue to turn our passion into purpose. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back next week.
Global.